It's Darren Rovell from the Action Network, and we're here with Jay Croucher, the Director of Trading at PointsBet. Jay, last week, you guys held your line on not making the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 15-point favorites. And look at that. They win. A lot of money coming in on Tampa Bay. They do not cover against the Patriots. So that was an enlightening conversation we had last week. Tell me in general about the interest on totals. What do you see compared to the interest on spreads?
So side spreads are always going to be the most popular way to bet the NFL. And then it's going to be the money line. And then totals will be third, although totals are becoming more popular, particularly with how high scoring games are. Like you said, we're in this new environment where now 48 is basically the baseline. And it's not too often now that you see games like Denver, Pittsburgh, and New England, Houston this week, which are under 40 at 39.5. Those are very much outliers.
How do you guys figure out the totals? I mean, we like to do this segment to kind of how does it work? Is it simply punching in a number and whatever spits out, and it's the same with, hey, if there's smart money coming in, it's moving in and out, or are totals at all different from spreads and money line?
No, it's generally the same principles that are going to apply. We'll have our baseline number based on the projections for both teams, and then sharp money will move the number up or down. I think with totals, as we get into this new era of really high scoring, that books are always going to be a little bit conservative, and we're not going to predict a paradigm shift until it's actually happened, though it definitely appears to be happening now. But with our numbers, again, the majority of action on totals is going to come on the over, not just in the NFL, but all sports, where bettors, they just like to bet on offense. They like to bet on things to happen as opposed to things not happening. And so, that will influence our handle splits, but we don't really adjust the number. We're not really cheating on the over because we just want to get the number right, and then we'll live with the consequences.
Okay, so that's why I'm an under better, because I feel like there's value on the under. But you're telling me just now that there's not necessarily value on the under because you're not bringing the number up more because people are betting on the over. Is that what you're telling me now, that whole idea of me going against the grain and doing the under is a fallacy?
I mean, it's a bit of a push and pull where, for the most part, the same principles that applied, to that Bucks Patriots line, it's the same reason we didn't move that to 7.5, is the same reason we're not going to cheat and inflate the total over, because if we do make the number wrong, then we're going to be exposed on the under. But at the same time, there is always, you're trying to find the balance between laying the best price you can, where your handle is still going to be, on one side, versus just getting the number right. But generally, we defer to just getting the number right.
How big is recency bias play in the totals compared to the spreads? Is it equal? So in other words, if you have a team that goes out and scores 50 alone, it's a total anomaly, and then the next week, is that total coming up more? And do you think that totals have more bias than spreads when there's something that happened the week before?
I think that it's largely similar, where it's just all about sample size and getting to the point where you treat something as real. So I think that the Arizona Cardinals, who are probably the most interesting team in the NFL this year, you look at their week one where they annihilate Tennessee, they put up 38. We're not going to treat them as real at that point, that they're a team that blows out division favorites by 25 points and scores 38 themselves every week. But now we're at the point where we've seen what Kyler Murray and that offense can do over the past 4 weeks. And now, particularly after the Rams game, you look back at the Tennessee result and it doesn't seem that surprising, and it does kind of cohere. So now when we have the sample on a team like Arizona, we're going to treat their offense as real, as one of the 5 best offenses in the NFL. But it probably took us 4 weeks to really treat that as real. We're certainly not going to after 1 or 2 weeks.
So would you say the lines are tighter and you feel better in week 5? Knowing that these teams, the sample size is good enough and they're going to be authentic to the formula you punch in?
Definitely. I think that the longer the season goes, the more sample that we get, particularly with things like opponent adjustments, where, you look at Philadelphia in week 1, where they destroy Atlanta, and that looks like a really impressive win at the time. But now you look back and Atlanta's just not very good, and Philadelphia were probably overvalued at that point. And now we have enough of a sample to know, exactly who Philadelphia and Atlanta are, or at least get pretty close. So, early season, we're still very comfortable with our lines because we think that our calculated guess is as good as any. But, the more data you get, obviously, the more information there is to be able to set these lines and set them accurately.
How dependent is the totals on the quarterback itself? What percentage of the time is it based on the quarterback? And then what percentage of the time is it based on the receivers or a running back? Most of the time it's the quarterback, right?
Yeah, it's the quarterback. And it's the quarterback is so determinative in the NFL, not just for totals, but obviously for the spread as well. The importance of the quarterback to football, it outweighs pretty much any position in any sport. And, in terms of how receivers factor in, I think it largely depends on the team. So, for instance, if Antonio Brown goes down for Tampa Bay, that's not nearly as big a deal for the total and the side as if Davante Adams goes down for Green Bay. And Davante Adams is a better player than Antonio Brown, but still in the context of, the step down from Davante to the next best receivers on the Packers versus for the Bucs, when you still have Evans and Godwin and Gronkowski when he's fit, that context is really going to play into the total as well.
What's the most interesting game for you this week? For me, it's probably looking at that New England-Houston game where obviously, Houston doesn't show up. They get blown out 40-0. New England played well, but they were playing at home in a game that was really hyped up, and, Belichick was preparing for 2 years. Looks like those guys opened at like 6.5-point favorite, and now they're inching up. They might even get to 10. In terms of the intriguing games this week, where does that fall?
I think you might be on an island a little bit and thinking the Davis Mills game is the most intriguing of the week. I think, to me, what's intriguing about this game is just exactly how bad is Davis Mills, and is he a guy where you just have to you start the line at double digits and then you work from there? And also, this Patriots defense, exactly how good is it? It looked really good against Tampa Bay. It's looked good for most of the season, but is it more like the 2019 Pats defense, which was the best in the league? Or is it more like last year's defense where it was, still solid, but certainly not elite? It's trending towards 2019 at this point, but I think we'll get more of a sample, and we'll also just understand exactly how bad the Texans are and whether they are, the clear worst team in the league, or just kind of in that mix with, Detroit and the Jets and company, who are just kind of run of the mill bad. But the game that I'm looking at as the most intriguing is Green Bay Cincinnati, where Cincinnati are 3-point dogs at home. And with Green Bay, they now have so many injuries that, they may have reached critical mass, where you just have too many injuries on the offensive line. On defense with Zadarius Smith and Jair Alexander, like, are they at the point now where they're just not an elite team because of all the top tier talent that they're missing? Like, we see that all the time in the NFL, that you just get too many clusters of injuries. That's what cost Kansas City the Super Bowl last year with those injuries on the offensive line. And it's what's ruining Denver's season at the moment, potentially, with the clusters that they have. So it's just a matter of whether Rodgers and Davante Adams and co are still just so good offensively that Green Bay can survive.
And then potentially we might get up to a historic total on, I'm hoping so I could pound the under on Buffalo, Kansas City, Sunday Night Football, another Sunday Night Football game that's going to be kind of the make and break for you, huh?
Yeah, this will be the biggest game of the week in terms of handle. There's going to be a lot of interest, where these are the two teams that, we see as the class of the AFC, just slightly ahead of Baltimore and Cleveland. This is a funny one because we already did this game. We did this game in the AFC title game, same location, same line, and activity was pretty split on that one. In this one, it's most of the spread activity is on the Chiefs, but most of the money line activity is on the Bills. And that's pretty common for lines that are, field goal or less, where, people are happy to take the spread on the favorite, but they'd rather back the money line and get the bigger price on the dog, just because people don't really care about the the 1 or 2 point margins, which happen so rarely in the NFL.
So on Miami, Tampa Bay, it's kind of like, well, how bad is Tampa Bay? How bad is Miami? But it seems like the Bucs get the win. They obviously didn't have Gronk, and then you're pitting up against Miami. Are the Bucs getting too much credit here?
I don't think their offense is getting too much credit. I think their offense is legitimate, clearly one of the best units in the NFL, even when they're missing, previously Antonio Brown or Rob Gronkowski. They still have so many weapons, and Brady is playing like a top 3 quarterback in the league still. But it's the same thing with, the Green Bay Packers, where you just get so many injuries on defense, particularly with the Bucs in the secondary, where I don't think they wanted to play Richard Sherman last week, but they had to, and they had to play him an immense amount of snaps just because they got no one else. And so I don't think Jacoby Brissett is the guy to really punish a wounded secondary, but certainly that Bucs team is much more vulnerable than we probably would have expected this early in the season.
Jay Croucher, the director of trading for PointsBet, thanks for joining us again for another week.
Thanks, Darren.
Make sure you check out all of PointsBet's promotions, including this one for Sunday Night Football.